Dvar Malchus, page 265. Laws of the Oral Torah which will never be nullified in connection with the completion of the study of the book of Rambam. From the talks of the second day of Rosh Hashanah and the night of Shabbos Kolamod Sukkos and the night and day of Simcha's Torah, 5752, 1991. This shiur is dedicated to the Refura Shelema of Ariel David ben Simcha. May it be immediately and speedily. Okay. In the Rambam's introduction to his halachic work, he writes, all the commandments which were given to Moshe at Sinai were given along with their instruction. As it is said, I gave to you stone tablets and the Torah and mitzvah. Torah refers to the written Torah, and the mitzvahs written to its refer to its explanation, namely the Oral Torah. And he explains at length the history of the transferring of the Oral Torah and its explanations from generation to generation by the great Torah scholars until this time, and he concludes, and I have decided to compile the rulings regarding the forbidden and permitted, the impure and pure, along with the rest of the Torah laws, so that the entire Oral Torah should be clearly known by all without any need for any analysis of questions and answers, rather a codification of laws, so that one should not need any other book to know any Jewish law. Rather, this book will gather all of the Oral Torah. Therefore, I call this work the Mishnah Torah, since one who reads the written Torah first and then reads the book will know the entire Oral Torah and does not need to read any other book along with them. And although the Rambam's compilation is a work of Oral Torah, Mishnah secondary to the written Torah, nevertheless being clear-cut rulings without any need for an analysis of questions and answers. Laws of the Oral Torah, it has a special significance, not only relative to the other parts of the Oral Torah, the discussion and debates in the Talmud, but also relative to the books of the prophets, and the holy writings, which are part of the written Torah. Similar to the significance of the written Torah, the Torah and the mitzvah, the written Torah and its explanation in the Torah's laws, which are in the Mishnah Torah, as is understood from the words of our sages, which are brought in as law in the Rambam's book, that all the books of the prophets and all the holy writings will be nullified in the days of Mashiach, whereas the laws of the Oral Torah will never be nullified, like the 5 books of the Torah. In other words, including in the eternity of the Torah, it is clear and explicitly stated in the Torah that the Torah is an eternal commandment. It can never change, and nothing can be added or deducted from it. It is the law of the Oral Torah, which are the explanation of the commandments through which we know how to fulfill the commandments of the Torah, whereas the books of the prophets and the holy writings, since they are not an addition or an innovation to the word of the Torah, for a prophet is not permitted to innovate anything, but rather to command the people to keep the Torah and warn them against transgressing. As the last of them, the prophets, said, remember the Torah of Moshe, my God's servant. And most certainly the discussions and debates in the Oral Torah regarding the method and learning and inferring the laws of the Torah from the Torah, which is only an intermediary to deduce the laws from Torah, indeed there will be no need for them, the discussion and debate of the Oral Torah, and therefore they will be nullified in the days of Mashiach. And then the hidden reason for the Torah's commandments will be revealed, its secret reasons and most hidden treasures. New Torah insights shall be revealed by me. And may we say that this idea is alluded to in the fact that the end of the culmination of the Rambam's Book of Laws, the last 2 chapters, the laws of kings and their wars, and the king of Mashiach, speaks specifically regarding the coming of Mashiach and the days of Mashiach. Since the day of Mashiach, the ultimate perfection of the phenomenon, that laws of the Oral Torah, which will never be nullified, like the 5 books of the Torah, will be entirely evident. And this is the essence of the Rambam's book, which gathers together all the laws of the Oral Torah, Mishnah Torah, a supplement to the Torah, in continuation to the study of the 5 books of the Torah. And may we explain that this concept of the entirety of eternity of the laws of the Torah in the time to come, laws of the Oral Torah which will never be nullified, and seemingly we must understand it is known that the general rule that the law is as the ruling of the school of Hillel, to the extent that the views of the school of Shammai, were it in contradiction to that of the school of Hillel, is of no significance. Only applies to the present time, whereas in the time to come, the laws will be according to the rulings of the school of Shammai, as explained elsewhere, that the transition of the law to the rulings of the school of Shammai will be through the Supreme Rabbinical Court, which will return to Yerushalayim and vote on which school's ruling to follow. And the majority opinion will then be as the school of Shammai. And according to this, the time to come, many of the laws of the oral Torah will be nullified. All the laws which were ruled on in the oral Torah, including those that appear in the Rambam's book, according to the school of Hillel's opinion, these laws will be nullified, and instead new laws will be issued according to the school of Shammai's opinion. And furthermore, and this is the main question, it is known that according to some opinions, the commandments will be nullified in the time to come, in the era of the resurrection of the dead, in the second era of the days of the Mashiach, unlike in the first era of the days of the Mashiach, before the resurrection of the dead, at which time the fulfillment of the commandments will be at its ultimate perfection, and therefore a garment which is known to contain shatnez as a mixture of wool and linen, which is prohibited, but is not known where in the garment the shatnez is, making it impossible to remove the shatnez, should be made into shouds for a dead person. Rav Yosef said this indicates that the commandments will be nullified to the time to come. One should make shouds for him, the dead person, out of shatnez, even though when he will arise in the time to come, he will be wearing the garments in which he was buried. From this we can infer that the commandments will be nullified in the time to come. And according to this, all the laws of the oral Torah will be nullified in the time to come, in the second era of the days of Mashiach, when the dead will be resurrected. For being that the commandments will be nullified, automatically all the laws will be nullified, since they are all instructions for how to perform these commandments. For this is to be understood, we must first explain the concept of the nullification of the commandments in the time to come. For seemingly this contradicts the entirety of the Torah. It is clear and explicitly stated in the Torah that the Torah, is an eternal command, and that we are commanded to fulfill the Torah says forever. Seemingly, one might explain that the concept of the nullification of the commandments in the time to come does not contradict the Torah's entirety, since the rule that the Torah is eternal, that we are commanded to fulfill all the Torah says forever, originally applies to the entire era of today. Before the resurrection of the dead is the time to toil in them, the commandments, and does not apply to the era of tomorrow in the world to come. It is the time to receive their reward. After all the Torah's commandments have been fulfilled in the ultimate perfection, at which time the commandments will be nullified. However, the explanation does not suffice, since the reason that the commandments of the Torah are eternal, the commandments which were given to Moshe at Sinai, namely that there will not be replaced with others, an everlasting command, is that they are the will of Hashem, meaning that his desire for the fulfillment of the commandments is not for a side reason, i.e. to refine and purify man and the world, bring them to perfection. For had that been true, there would be no room to say when man and the world ascend to a higher level, they will need different commandments, or that they will not need commandments at all, rather an essential will, and therefore it is not subjected to change, deduction, or addition. And this is the difference between the commandments of the Torah and the commandments of Hashem through the prophets. The commands through the prophets are for a side purpose. Needless to say, commands deal with worldly matters, such as go to a such and such place, or do not go, which their intent and purpose is obviously not the command itself, but also commands dealing with Torah matters, that they are intent and the purpose is not the command itself, but rather the command to the people to keep the Torah and warn them against transgressing it. And therefore these commands are only for a certain period of time, whereas the commandments of the Torah are eternal, an eternal command being that they are the will of Hashem. And from this it is understood that we may say that the eternity of the commandment of the Torah is only throughout the era of today to toil in them, when there is a need for the work of the Jewish people to refine the world, and afterward tomorrow to receive their reward. The commandments cease to exist because the aforementioned will of Hashem is eternal, not dependent on anything, and does not change in accordance with the changes which take place in the state of man in the world. And according to this, since it is clearly and explicitly stated in the Torah that the Torah is an eternal commandment, how can it be that the commandments will be nullified in the time to come? This will be understood by first explaining the nuance of the Talmudic discussion of the nullification of the commandments in the time to come. A garment which is known to contain shotness, but is not known where in the garment the shotness is, should be made into shrouds for a dead person, as rather clothes for a dead person. Rav Yosef said, this indicates the commandments will be nullified in the time to come. Abai, and some say Rav Dimi, say to him, didn't Rav Mani in the name of Rav Yanai, say that the dead person may wear shotness, was only taught regarding while they are eulogizing him. However, it is forbidden to bury him while he is wearing it. He, Rav Yosef, answered him, did we not learn about that this Rav Yochanan said it is permitted even to bury him in it? And Rav Yochanan is going according to his reason, for Rav Yochanan said, what does the verse mean when it says, free amongst the dead? Once a person passes away, he becomes free from the commandments, for seemingly this is puzzling. Rav Yochanan's reasoning, once a person passes away, he becomes free from the commandments, helps that as long as he is dead, the prohibition of shotness is not incumbent upon him. However, it doesn't help for the time after the resurrection, when he will stand up wearing the garments in which he was buried, at which time the prohibition of shotness would be incumbent on him. And being that this is so, the time period of Rav Yochanan reasoning of amongst the dead before the resurrection is not pertinent to the era after the resurrection, when Rav Yosef's reasoning that the commandments will be nullified in the time to come is indeed to permit the wearing of shotness. And therefore, how does Rav Yochanan reason support Rav Yosef's statement? Furthermore, and this is the main difficulty, in the Talmudic discussion regarding the resurrection of the dead in Tractate Sanhedrin, Rav Yochanan said, from where in the Torah do we know the dead will be resurrected? For it is stated, and you shall give from it the heavenly offering of Hashem to Aaron the Kohen. And does Aaron live forever? And he didn't even enter the land of Israel, where they would be able to give him the heaven offering. Rather, this teaches us that eventually he will live again, and the Jewish people will give him the heaven offering. And this proves that Rav Yochanan is of the point that the commandments will not be nullified in the time to come, and the commandment of giving a heaven offering will be fulfilled after the resurrection of the dead. And if so, how did Rav Yochanan say that we are permitted even to bury him, knowing that when he will arise, his clothes in his clothes he will be wearing shotness? And may we say that Rav Yochanan is going according to his reasoning. Once a person passes away, he becomes free from the commandments, is also an explanation of Rav Yosef's opinion that the commandments will be nullified in the time to come. The meaning of the commandments will be nullified in the Torah in the time to come only applies to the command to the person, specifically using the term commandments, which denotes a command to a person, that once a person passes away, after his service in the fulfillment of the commandments is completed, he, the person, becomes free from the commandments, meaning that even in the era of the resurrection, after the completion of our actions and the service of the fulfillment of the commandments, through the era of today to toil in them, he no longer has a command to fulfill the commandments. However, the intrinsic essence of the commandments themselves remains forever an everlasting commandment, not as a command to man, but rather as Hashem's will. And the explanation of this, the definition of the commandments, a command to man, applies only when a person is in a separate existence. But then he falls under the category of needing the commandments of Hashem in order to act according to Hashem's will. However, once a person has completed his service in the fulfillment of the commandments, when his entire existence, with all its details, is permeated with Hashem's will, and he reaches the state of savas unification, mitzvot, commandment, in an idiom of savas unification and the bonding with Hashem until they become one entity, the Jewish people through the Torah and Hashem are one, as will actually be in the revealed manner in the time to come. There can no longer be a command to a person because he is not a separate existence, but rather that he himself is Hashem's will, which is certainly carried out automatically without having to be commanded, due to the intrinsic essence of the commandments. An analogy for this may be, when a person wants to move his leg, he doesn't need to tell it to move. Rather, at the moment he wishes to move it, it automatically moves. This is because it is not a separate existence, but rather a part of his own body. And this resolves the contradiction between the two statements of Rabbi Yochanan, who opines that it is permissible to bury someone wearing shatnez because the commandments will be nullified in the time to come, even though he infers that there will be a resurrection of the dead from the fact that the heaven offering will be given to Aaron after his resurrection, since the intrinsic existence of the giving of the heaven offering will remain even after the resurrection of the dead, but not as a command to a person who has become free from the commandments. Free in a good sense, that he does not need to be commanded, because he is not a separate existence, but rather one entity with Hashem, and therefore it is permissible to bury him in shatnez, since when he will arise in the future, he will not have a command forbidding the wearing of shatnez, and therefore he, on his part, does not have to be cautious about this prohibition, even though he certainly will not remain dressed in shatnez after the moment of resurrection. However, not resulting from a commandment, but rather automatically he will take it off, due to Hashem will negate shatnez, which is revealed and expressed through the prohibition of shatnez. And the following will further explains the above indeed, and this concept is emphasized in the precise wording of the two statements, which seem to contradict each other. The commandments will be nullified in the time to come, and the laws of the Torah will never be nullified. The difference between the commands and the Torah is that the commands are a command to a man as to how to act in the world, meaning that there is an existence of man and the world, and the commandments are an introduction as to how man and the world should be, meaning that although the purpose of the commandments is not to benefit man and the world, being that they are intrinsic will of Hashem, which transcends all reason and purpose as explained earlier. Nevertheless, they relate to man and world, meaning that that the will is about man and the world. However, Torah is a precious hidden treasure from before the world was created. The laws of Torah are not instructions to man and the world, since the level is before the world was created, i.e. this transcends the created world, but rather Hashem's will as it exists in his true essence. I, Hashem, have inscribed the place of my essence in the Torah, which does not have any relation to something else besides for him. In other words, from the perspective of the commandments are for the world, meaning that the world should act according to his will. However, from the perspective of Torah, the Torah precedes the world, and the creation of the world is for the Torah, so that his will, which transcends relation to the world, should also actualize in the world. And according to this, it's understood that the commandments will be nullified in the time to come, and together with this, the laws of the Torah will never be nullified. Because in the time to come, man and the world will ascend to a level which transcends the world, and therefore the commandments which relate to the world will be nullified in the time to come, whereas the laws of the Torah, which do not relate to the world, will never be nullified. And may we say, the explanation of tomorrow to receive their reward is that there will be revelation in the person, the Jew, who fulfills the commandments, and through him it will be revealed also in the world the true concept of the commandments. The reward for the commandment is the commandment itself, as they are in the Torah, which transcends the world, and the whole existence of the world is only that in this supernal will is actualized. The reward is the pleasure we receive from being engulfed in the revelation of the splendor of the eternal will of Hashem. And may we add that this idea is also emphasized in the exposition of our sages, from which they conclude that the law of the Torah will never be nullified. Also, the laws will not be nullified, as it is said, halachos, literally the way, an idiom of halachos, laws of the world are his will. Do not read halachos, but rather halachos, will be always. There is a well-known rule that the method study that do not read, but rather does not negate the simple meaning, but rather adds another explanation, are both true. And similarly in our case, the exposition of do not read halachos, but rather halachos, is in addition to the idea of the way the world are his. And from this it is understood that the halachos, laws of the Torah, that are two aspect level, the way of the world are his are his. Do not read halachis, but rather halachos, and the differences between them are this. The way of the world are his, meaning that there is the existence and conduct of halachas of the world and the effect of the laws of the Torah, that it should be the way of the world are his, that the world should run according to Hashem's will, namely that it should be clearly and tangible evident that all the workings of the world are his, Hashem's. And a higher level than this, do not read it halachas, but rather halachos, that form the perspective of the level of Torah preceding the world. The way of the world do not exist. Do not read it halachas, but rather the Torah exists, but rather halachos. And the creation of the world is for the purpose of the fulfillment of Hashem's will as it is expressed in the law of the Torah. And according to this, we may explain the content of the expounding. Do not read it halachas, but rather halachos. And therefore, there will always exist that from the perspective of the level of the ways of the world are his, that there is the existence of the world, and the purpose of the laws is to affect the world. Behold, when the effect of the laws of the world is completed, the laws will be nullified. However, from the perspective of the level that do not read it halachas, but rather halachos, that their true concept in Hashem they will always exist, and the existence of the laws of Torah remains in the world, not in a way of affecting a command the world, but rather automatically the world will conduct itself according to them as a result of Hashem's will, which is expressed through the laws of Torah, which are present in the world. And according to the above, that the fulfillment of the laws of the Torah in the time to come, which will never be nullified, is not a command to man, but rather they are from the perspective of Torah, the will of Hashem. We may explain, and also the laws according to the opinion of the school of Hillel, in the matter in which the school of Shammai and Hillel disagree, and the law which was decided according to the school of Hillel, and in the time to come, that they, the Sanhedrin, which will return to Jerusalem and vote on which school's ruling to follow, and the ruling will be according to the opinion of the school of Shammai. Nevertheless, indeed, they will never be nullified. And this will be understood by prefacing the explanation of the words of the Mishnah. Every dispute which is for the sake of heaven will ultimately endure. This refers to the dispute of Shammai and Hillel, that the question is asked about this. How can we say that a dispute will endure? Behold, it is only possible for one of the opinions to endure, and the word dispute includes both sides. And the answer was given, since both of these are the words of the living Torah, and the words of the school of Shammai also have a source above in the spiritual world of Atzilus, just as the ruling is not according to their opinion and is not sufficient answer as to why it says that the dispute will ultimately endure. Yet the Arizal explains that in the future, in the time of Mashiach, the law will be according to the school of Shammai, and this is literally will ultimately endure in the fullest sense. And we must understand, even according to the explanation of the Arizal, that in the future, in the time of Mashiach, the law will be according to the school of Shammai, and this is literally will ultimately endure in the fullest sense. Behold, the explanation that it will ultimately endure refers to the opinion of the school of Shammai, that in the future the law will be in according to them, and not the dispute of Shammai and Hillel, since when the opinion of the school of Shammai will endure as a result of the law being decided according to them, the law according to the school of Hillel will be nullified. And furthermore, this is the main difficulty. How is it possible that the law according to the school of Hillel will be nullified after the Jewish people have followed the opinion of the school of Hillel throughout all the generations, since the law was decided according to them? Behold, this is the greatest dissent for the opinion of the school of Hillel. The complete opposite of the general rule of the holiness is always on the ascent, and specifically in the time of Mashiach. And we may possibly explain that when the Arizal said that in the future, the time of Mashiach, the law would be according to the school of Shammai, this refers to the first era in the days of Mashiach, but the second era of the day of Mashiach, when the dead will be resurrected, the commandments will be nullified in the time to come, when the dispute of Shammai and Hillel will endure, that the law will be according to both Shammai and Hillel at the same time, as will be further explained. And the explanation of this, the dispute between the schools of Shammai and Hillel, these sages rule it impure, and these rule it pure. These prohibit, while these permit. These rules these rules it unfit, and this rules it fit. To the extent that the Torah becomes like two Torahs, it is only relevant to the law of the Torah as they come into the form of the command to man, of a command to man in order to improve the world. The way of the world are his, for since at this level of existence of man and the world is recognized and significant, and the nature of the world is such that these are two opposite approaches, chesed, kindness, and gevurah, severity. Therefore, also in Hashem's will, at the level that there are two manners of conduct. However, as the laws of Torah are in their true essence, at which level their purpose is not to improve the world, but rather they are Hashem's will as it is for itself. Do not read it halachas, but rather halachos, also the different opinions on the rulings of the laws of Torah, which are both of these are the words of the living Torah, are one Torah. They were all given by one shepherd, that being that he is all-inclusive. He possesses both opinions of performing and of negating, and the unification of both, similar to what is said. Hashem spoke one utterance, and I heard two. And from Hashem's perspective, they can be manifest in the existence of the world as they are Hashem's essence, performing and negating at the same time, being that he is not limited in any way. And this is the basis for the difference in the discussion of the law regarding the disputes of Shammai and Hillel. In this era, the laws according to the school of Hillel. In the days of Mashiach, the laws according to the school of Shammai. And in the era of resurrection, the law according to both the school of Shammai and the school of Hillel together. During the era of today, to toil in them, which includes the present time and also the first era of the days of Mashiach, before the resurrection of the dead, when there will become to be a fulfillment of the Torah and its commandments at the height of perfection, since the main emphasis is on the effect of the world, the way of the world are his. Behold, the nature of the world obligates. The law is as to how to act must be according to one opinion, and the other opinion exists only in supernal realms, but not that we are to act according to this opinion. During the present era, the law is according to the school of Hillel, and the opinion of the school of Shammai exists in supernal realms, and in the day of the Mashiach, the law in according to the school of Shammai and the opinion of the school of Hillel exists in the supernal realm. However, after that era of today to toil in them, at the time of tomorrow to receive their reward in the world of resurrection, in which the commandments will be nullified in the time to come, meaning that the concept of the command to man is nullified, and all that remains is their true essence, that they are Hashem's will. Law of Torah, which will never be nullified. The laws will be according to both the school of Shammai and the school of Hillel together, since the world there will be a revelation of Hashem's will as it exists in his essence. Blessed be he, the one who can do the impossible. And may we connect this idea to what the Rambam says about the days of Mashiach at the end of the culmination of the Book of Laws. And by way of preference, we will first mention the reasoning behind the order and division of the laws in the last chapter, that after the Rambam describes the details in the description of the days of Mashiach in the first three laws, and he concludes the topic in the fourth law by saying that the sages and the prophets did not desire the day of the Mashiach for any other reason, but in order that they would be free to devote themselves to Torah and its wisdom, so that they would merit the life in the world to come. He introduces in the final law a new concept, and in the era there will not be hunger nor war, as well as no jealousy and competition, for the good will flow in great abundance, and their delicacies will be found in dust. Furthermore, the entire world will be occupied only with knowing Hashem, as it is said, for the earth will be filled with the knowledge of Hashem as the water covers the sea. And may we say that in the final law, he adds briefly and by way of allusion, also regarding the second era of the days of Mashiach, that there will be a change in the regular conduct of the world, beginning with the main change in the resurrection of the dead, as explained at length elsewhere. And accordingly to the explained above regarding the difference between the days of Mashiach and the era of the resurrection of the dead, that in the days of Mashiach, the service and the fulfillment of the commandments, a command to man will reach perfection. And in the era of the resurrection of the dead, the command to man will be nullified, and the commandments will be nullified. And there will be revelation of true concept, namely that they are Hashem's will. Laws of Torah, we may say that this idea is also alluded to in the difference in the wording of the Rambam in the last two laws. The fourth law, he writes, The sages and the prophets did not desire the days of Mashiach for any other reason, but in order that they would be free to devote themselves to Torah and its wisdom, so that they would merit the life of the world to come, as we have explained in the laws of Tshuva, which there, in the laws of Tshuva, explains that the length and the abundance of good in this world, including its perfection in the days of Mashiach, is a means for the perfect service of the fulfillment of Torah and its commandments in order to merit the reward for the commandments of the world to come. Whereas in the fifth law, where he adds a new concept regarding the time of the resurrection, or rather the time of the redemption, which will be the second era, he does not write that the state of utopia is a means for any objective or purpose in order to. And may we say that the explanation of this is during the first era of the days of Mashiach, and the time of today to toil in them at its ultimate perfection, above which he, the Rambam, speaks in the fourth law. Since there is a command to man, the main emphasis is on the benefit of the person from fulfilling the commandments, the reward of the commandments, so that they would merit the world to come. Whereas in the second era of the days of the Mashiach, when the dead will be resurrected, since the command to man will be nullified and there will be revelation of their commandments, true concept that they are Hashem's will, and as a result of his will, blessed be he, man and the world will be automatically at the height of perfection, namely that the entire world will be occupied only with knowing Hashem, for the earth will be fulfilled with the knowledge of Hashem. It is understood that the state of utopia is not for any objective or purpose in order to, since there is no service of man involved, but rather it itself is the objective and purpose. And accordingly to this, we may say that also, according to the Rambam, the main and ultimate reward in the world of resurrection, as is the ruling in the Hasidic doctrine, only that he did not write this explicitly, just like he did not write explicitly about the second era of the days of Mashiach, when the dead will be resurrected, since the purpose of the objective of compiling the book of laws is that all the bylaws should be clear to young and old regarding the law of each and every command. It is completed at the end of the era of today to toil in them, and nevertheless, since the true concept of this compilation is laws of Torah, as they are part of Hashem's will. Therefore, in the final law, which is at the end of the culmination of the book of laws, the Rambam alludes to the state of the world as it will be in the world of resurrection, when there will be the revelation of the true concept of the laws of Torah, namely that they are not for the benefit of a person so that they would merit the world to come, but rather the knowledge of the Creator, the knowledge of Hashem, which is indeed the main and ultimate reward, that the existence of man and the world is completely engulfed and covered by the knowledge of Hashem as the waters of the sea.